Hi, and welcome to Jules Voto's Photo Focus. This video is being recorded after using the Nikon Z8 for 3 weeks. And the more I use it, the more I love it. I look forward to going out and taking pictures with this camera. I'm still customizing it and learning all its features and controls, but so far it's working just great. Now I'm going to talk more about my experiences with the Z8 over these 3 weeks and some of the things I've learned since my last video. But before we talk more about the Z8, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the other digital cameras that I have loved over the years. First, I would say is the Nikon D300. That camera came out in 2008 and I thought it was just great at the time. I was coming from a D200. It was comfortable, it was pro build, and I really enjoyed that camera. Next would be the Nikon D810, and I still have that D810 and it's still going strong. It is still a great camera. I have shot over 150,000 pictures with it. And for a time I thought that was the only camera I was ever going to need. 36 megapixels is fine. These are great detailed images. I used it a lot for headshots, groups, actually all types of photography. The only area where other cameras were better would be in action type stuff. I do shoot some football and high school basketball, and I've been getting into wildlife photography, and it wasn't the best camera for that. And just one more, the Nikon Z6. Now when I first got the Z6, I was still using the 810 quite a bit. It took me a while to get used to the mirrorless camera, but there were some things about it that were just great and superior to the 810. Of course, the what you see is what you get in the viewfinder was wonderful. The light weight of the camera, the Z-mount lenses, which are great, and I still have that camera and the D810, and I have no plans to dispose of them. But let's get back more into the Z8. That's a camera that right now, where I am in my photography, I don't think I'll ever need another camera. I had talked previously about Nikon possibly coming out with a DX version of the Z9, similar to the D500 being an APS-C version of the D5. But now, using this Z8, I don't think that's necessary. I get great images even using DX mode, and DX mode on the Z8 gives you 19 megapixel images, very close to the 20 megapixel images you get with the D500. And the autofocus on this camera is much better, the frame rate, and there's just so many things that are better than the D500. And of course, not to forget those Z-mount lenses. So let me just go over some of the things I've learned this past week, some of the changes I've made. I'm still learning this camera. There's a lot to learn. And I want to recommend 2 authors of ebooks, and I will put a link in the description below. Tom Hogan, who just came out with a Bible on the Z8. It's about 1,200 pages. And also Steve Perry, who has a setup guide for the Z8 and Z9 for wildlife photography. Both of those ebooks are excellent, and like I said, I will put a link in the description below. I learned quite a bit from these guys. I haven't finished the Hogan book yet, but it's excellent. I know because I had his previous book on the Z6 and Z7. So let me just go over some of these things that I just love about this Z8. And I mentioned this before, but one is the grip on this. It's longer than the Z6. And by the way, I'm filming this on the Z6 right now. It's more comfortable to hold. My little finger doesn't fall off the grip. Now, I hope you don't mind if I just refer to my notes. There's so many things I want to say about this camera. So what are some of the features that I really love about this camera. The autofocus is number one. The Z6 was good. It was fine for portraits and stationary subjects, but it wasn't the greatest for action. I've used it for football, basketball, birds in flight, and it just couldn't keep up in many cases. Now that's the Z6. I know the Z6 II has improved on that, but the Z8 is just phenomenal. Now I haven't shot sports yet with it, but I have shot birds in flight, and it's been excellent. The screen, the tilting screen on the back of the camera. Yes, the Z6 has a tilting screen, but not like this. Not where you could use it for vertical shots. So I could hold this camera low and get vertical shots using the LCD screen. I could put the camera on the floor, like I did some images of my cat and a few weeks ago of my cousin's granddaughter. I just put it on the ground and it works great. Very pleased with that, and it seems very well built. It's very sturdy. I know people had talked previously of some of the lower price cameras that they felt that those screens were kind of wobbly and wouldn't hold up. I see no issue with this screen at all. Another thing is the low ISO of 64. I know the 810 has that, the 850, the D7, the D7 II, but I really appreciate that because that's what I use when shooting studio portraits using studio lighting. Another thing I really like are the selectable grids. Now, Nikon digital cameras, as far as I can remember, have always had a digital grid, but there was only one choice. This camera, you have the 4x4 grid like previous Nikon cameras, but you also have a 3x3 grid, which breaks the screen down into the rule of thirds. And you also have something that really sold me on the camera, is the 5:4 grid, which gives you the proportions of an 8x10 in the viewfinder. Really love that. Also, something I just learned in the last few days as far as center weighted metering. Now, Nikon cameras have always had some form of center weighted metering dating back to the I was ready to say Photonic T, but the Photonic T for the Nikon F had an averaging meter. The Photonic TN of 1967 or 68, I believe, had first showed the center weighted metering for the Nikons. Well, they've had some form of that all the way through. And in the D810, you could select how wide that area is. It was 12% in the original Nikons. This camera has that, and it gives you two selections, a wide center weighted area and a more narrow area. But the best thing about that, you can see in the viewfinder and on the LCD the size of that center weighted area. Previously, on the older Nikons, it was just etched into the screen, that 12% area. Now you could actually see, when you change that size, the actual size. So I really like that. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to change the center weighted metering area from what you see here, the 12mm circle, to a smaller 8mm circle. So we're going to press the menu button. In the custom settings menu, you want to go to B, metering exposure. Press the selector to the right, and we're going to move down to B5, center weighted area. You see it says standard there. We're going to press the multi-selector to the right again, and you can see, again, it says standard. We're just going to move up one to small, press the OK button. Now I'm just going to put light pressure on the shutter release to show you we now have the smaller metering area that measures just an 8mm area. I mentioned this briefly in my last video. First week I was shooting with the camera for wildlife, I was using back button focus. I decided to change that to using the focus on the shutter button, and I then changed the AF on button to 3D tracking, and that works really great. And another thing, in order to change ISO, for example, on and the Z6 and Z7 are like this. You have the ISO button on the right side, right behind the shutter release, very convenient. You press and hold it in and turn the rear command dial, the main command dial on the camera. However, there is a setting, and it is in custom function F6. That's the purple menu. It's called release button to use dial. Now the default is off. So to change that ISO, as I just explained, you hold the button down, must continue to hold it down and turn the command dial. When you select release button to use dial to on, then all you have to do is press the ISO button, release it, and then you could change the ISO. And you could do that while looking through the viewfinder. Okay, right now I just want to show you real quick how to set up release button to use dial. Okay, so we're going to come over and just press the menu button. Right now it's set for the photo shooting menu. I'm just going to press the multi-selector to the left to make sure I'm in the left column, and I'm just going to move down to the pencil icon, all right? Then I'm going to press one time to the right for controls, okay? Press to the right again, and I'm on release button to use dial. It's F6. Now you can see right now it says off. I'm going to press the OK button one time to turn it on. It's that simple. Okay, I'm just going to put light pressure on the shutter release. So now we are again set up to shoot. I have a lens cap on, that's why you don't see anything. It just, I figured it would make this a little easier to see on the LCD. Okay, so now we have it set for release button to use dial. I'm just going to press the ISO button on the top of the camera one time, and you can see ISO at the bottom here just turn yellow. That means it's active, so I could change it. All right, so let's leave it set to 2000. To lock it in, what I'm going to do is either press that ISO button again or just light pressure on the shutter release. And this works for anything where you need to press and hold a button. Let's do it for AF. I'm going to press that AF button on the lower left front of the camera. I'm going to press it one time, and you can see in yellow I have AFC and wide area. Okay, I'm going to turn the back button, the back dial, excuse me, the command dial. Now I'm in AFS. All right, if I want to change to go to wide area, there we go, wide area small, wide area large, the custom wide areas, just turning that front dial, and then either press that AF button again on the left front or the shutter release, and it locks it in. So it makes it very simple and very quick to change your ISO. It's easy to do, to change your autofocus areas. It's easy to do with your eye to the camera. There is so much customization available with this camera. Almost every button can be reprogrammed to fit your needs. And I really like that. Like I said, I'm still getting used to it. One other thing that is customizable on the Nikon Z mount lenses is this control ring towards the back near the lens mount. Now, when I was shooting at the wildlife refuge in my first video, after 1 week with the Z8, I accidentally turned it, and I had it set to do exposure compensation. Now, you can have it set for exposure compensation, ISO, or aperture, or none. And I accidentally turned it underexposing quite a few images. I was shooting at 20 frames a second, and I didn't notice. So I should have noticed it. It does indicate in the viewfinder if you have exposure compensation set. But so it was very easy to turn, and just touching it a little bit would give you a big change in your exposure compensation. So I did find in the menus on the camera and in custom function F10, it's called Control Ring Response. And the default is high, but you could set it for slow. So I have done that, and I'm going to try it out. Now, one thing that has slowed me down a little bit is the location of the playback button. On the Z8, it's on the back of the camera on the bottom right, where on the Z6 and Z7 and D810 and D7100, it's on the upper left on the back of the camera. So I keep reaching to the upper left, press it, and nothing happens. So I'm going to see if that button can be reprogrammed for playback and then possibly reprogram the playback button for something else. It's not a major issue, but just when you're going from camera to camera, it does get a little confusing. And by the way, I did sell my D500 and my Z7 recently because I feel that the Z8 is better at all the things that those cameras were able to do. I haven't shot any studio type portraits yet with this camera, and I will be doing that in a few days, and I will report on how that goes in my next video. I don't anticipate any problems. I've used the Z7 for studio portraits, the Z6. I'm assuming this camera is going to be better, especially with the phenomenal eye focus. It just is so accurate, and it focuses right on the eye, not on the eyelash. It is really good. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So if you have any questions on the Z8, please drop me an email or put a comment in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I come out with a new video every Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. and I'm going to repeat this. I know I said a few weeks ago that I was going to try to do 2 videos a week. I hopefully will get around to that. But for now, you're guaranteed to have one every Wednesday at 11 Eastern Time. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.